Dafim. I think in Mizrahi on top of the page, Kuf Tesam al the very top of the page. So that's 109A1, the very top of the page. So here we are telling the story of what happened with Nachum Ish Gamzu. Because we spoke about Avram Avinu, that they had this sand that when Avram, because Shem asked Eliezer, how did you win the war? So we had the sand that when they threw it, it all turned into spears and the straw turned into arrows. And the Gemara tells a story very similar. So it actually starts Kuf Chesem base in the very bottom, a line and a half from the bottom of the page. So just quickly say that. Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum Ish Gamzu. He was the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. And he was called Gamzu because everything that occurred in his life, he would say, oh, Gamzu Teva, it's all for the best. Havarogel was common, the Choda Havisalkale, that no matter what happened to him, he would say, Gamzu Teva, it's all good. Rabbi Akiva, his student, would say, Kol Mad Ovid Shmai Latava. Whatever Hashem did, eventually would turn out good. Nachum Gamzu was much higher Madrigan than that. He said, this is good. Not it'll turn out good, this is good.
He passed me
from Hashem. One day, Boy Yisrael, during the case, one day they wanted to send a gift to the king. Amri, they said, who should we send the gift with? Nishade Bahade Nachum Ish Gamzu, should we send it? Yes, we will. We should send it with Nachum Ish Gamzu, the Melumid Benisim Hu. He is very familiar with miracles, and you always need miracles in these kind of in the diplomacy. So what happened was, he stayed in this hotel. He wanted to reside there overnight. So they said to him, what do you have with you? Amalu, he said, I am carrying a package for the king. Kamu Balaila. So the people there stood up at night and Sharinu Lesifte, they opened up the box, and the Shaklu Kodahalbe, they took away from the box everything that was there. They stole everything that was there. Umaluna Afa, and they filled it up with dust, with sand. Anyway, Kimata Lahasim, when he came there, he found Afra, he found that the box was full of sand, and the king found that people opened up the full of sand. They're mocking me here. What did they bring the sand for? Avkula Mikle took him out to be killed. Omar, Nachum Gamzu said, Gamzu Lateva, so for the best. Leo came along he transformed himself as one of the advisors, and Amalei said, maybe this is special sand. It's like Avram's sand that you throw the sand, it turns into spears. You throw the sand in the air, it turns into swords. Gili, you throw the straw in the air, it becomes arrows. Boduk, they checked it out, but Ashkoch, and they found Hachi, it's exactly that. Mechuzah, there was Hachi, it's exactly that. There was this country, the king could not conquer this country for whatever reason. They put up stiff resistance and he couldn't conquer it. He sent from this sand over there, and they were able to conquer the country. They brought Nachum Ish Gamzu into the treasury and they said, take whatever you want. He filled up his box with gold. When he came, they said to him, Hanev the people of that hotel, they saw it first, they never expected him to come back. They said to him, my Amtus Malka, what did you bring to the king? They thought maybe he swapped it for something else. He said, my Shakli Mahacha, am Hasam. What I took from here, I brought there. Shakli Inu, they took a whole bunch of sand, loads and loads of sand. Amtu Lahasam brought it there. Katlinu Lahandir, the king saw the sand, he killed him. When Daf Kuf Tes Amad Aleph, probably about 20 lines on the top of the page by the two dots. Now, this story of Nachum Ish Gamzu, we have the stories repeated twice in Shas. We have it here in Sanhedrin, and we have it in Masechta Tainis, right? That he brought they took away the gold, they filled it with sand. But in our Gemara here, it seems that he was totally unaware of what happened, and he went to the king, and a miracle happened. But in the Gemara Tainus, it seems from there that he knew exactly the people in the hotel stole all the gold, and they filled it with sand, and he still said Gamzu Lateva, and off he went to the king's palace. And they wonder There's a rule that you're not allowed to rely on miracles. So how did Nochamish Gamzu have the right to go to the king's palace with a box full of sand and wait for a miracle to occur, like Eliyahu will show up? He had no right to do that. So there's actually a beautiful pshat that I once saw. When Nochamish Gamzu saw that, he thought, this is for the best, because his plan was, which is exactly what he did. He went to the king and he said to the king, look, if I bring you gold, no matter how much gold I bring you, you have many more times that amount. You have a whole treasury here. They're full of gold and diamonds and all kinds of precious stones. It will be, no matter what we bring, it would be a joke. So I'm bringing you a box of sand to tell you exactly that. There's nothing that we can add to your treasury because you have everything already. You're the greatest king in the world. You're the wealthiest person in the world, the most powerful person in the world. And this is our way of praising you. That was his plan. And he was going to say, just like Avraham Avinu, who also was a very humble person, and that's why he was so liked by so many. Then Eliyahu, obviously, he wasn't relying on a miracle. He was relying on the stratagem that he had. Turned out to be that a miracle happened, but he wasn't relying on that. Anyhow, we're up to the 2 dots over here. We're going through different countries or communities that forfeited their share in the world to come. So the next one is Der Haflaga. The Der Haflaga is the people who wanted to build the Tower of Babel. It's interesting that the Torah does not tell us what they did wrong. All it says they want to build a tower, and they said, we'll make ourselves a name. What exactly did they do? What was the Avera? Why were they punished? The Torah does not inform us. And when it comes to the Mabul, the Torah tells us exactly why they were destroyed. And one of the reasons given is because the Mabul, what they did then is a very common thing. They robbed and plundered and pillaged, didn't respect other people's wives. They did all those terrible things. And as a result of that, they were punished. And that's something that every generation has to be aware of, the consequences of this kind of behavior, because it's very commonplace. But what they did in the Der Haflaga, which was to build this tower and to put Avodah Zarah there, is something which is so rare. The Torah didn't bother giving us any deals, any specifics as to what happened to the Der Haflaga, what that area is. And in fact, we're going to see right now, the Gemara has a discussion, what exactly did they do wrong. So we'll continue the Gemara. We already learned the story of that. We're in Kuf Tes by the 2 dots, about 20 lines on the top of the page. Der Haflaga Elam Cheglam Haba.
Get a voch.
Kuf Tes. My Avod. What exactly did they do? So the Gemara itself asks. The Torah doesn't tell us, as we just explained. So what did they do wrong?
Hang on, where are you starting from, rebuttal?
We started a while ago.
I thought it was 8:45.
8:35. You wrote it.
Oh, I read it wrong. I read my own message wrong.
Sorry, we started 8:35. And yeah. I think I said that. 1 second. Let me have a quick look. I'm sure I said that.
The chat says 8:45.
We should start it.
Yeah.
So we got.
What did I say?
The model Hazara.
8:35. Brian, I wrote you 8:35. The reason why 8:35 is because I'm doing 2 blot tonight, so that we don't have to learn Shabbos and Yom Tov next week. So that's why you
put 8:45 on our list. I wrote it wrongly.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, it's a beautiful story that we just learned, and you should, with Nochamish Gamzu, which we explained as well what happened, and you should, it's easy to read and see what happened there. Let's continue. What happened to Der Haflaga? They said was...
So where is it? Where is it now you're up to?
Kuf Tes, about 20 lines on the top of the page, the 2 dots, it says Der Haflaga. It says Der Haflaga. So what happened was they said, Nibna Migdal, let's build a tower. The Nala the Kia will go up to the sky. Then and the Naka Oisa Bekardumas. And we're going to hit Oisa, will hit him with axes. Kadeshi will hit the sky with axes. Kadeshi Zoivu Meimav. In order that it will rain. That water will come out of the skies. Machkoleb Marav. That's what Rav Shela said. They said, is that what happened to Der Haflaga? It doesn't make sense. Why? Because if they wanted to reach very high, why did they build it in a valley? They should have built it on top of a mountain to be closer to the sky. So what actually happened here? There were three different groups. They all were doing the same thing, but for a different agenda. Agenda number one. Let's go up. The nation Sham. Let's go up there and we'll live on top as a community. So what's wrong with that? And why were they punished? Because the next Gemara that ultimately they all wanted to have Avodah Zarah as well. The next group said, let's go and build an Avodah Zarah. And the third group said, let's go wage a war against the Rebbeinu Shalom. So now each one was punished. Let's go and sit there and live there and we'll enjoy our Avodah Zarah. Have feet from Hashem. Hashem scattered them. The one who said, let's go wage a war against the Koyachol, Hashem. Nasa, they became kufim, monkeys. Now, this little piece of Gemara is fascinating. What was the punishment? What happened to these people? They became monkeys, the ruchas, they became spirits, and shadim, they became shadim, and lilin, they became lilin. What are these different things? So Rashi says over here, Rashi says that this is what happened. That one group became ruchin, which means they have no shape, no form, spirits. Then you have shadim. Shadim sort of had a human feel. Then you have lilin. And he says lilin had the shape of a person as well, but he also had wings. In other words, Rashi holds that a shed, a demon, does not have wings. Lilin have wings. Ruach has no form or anything else. In the Gemara Chagiga says that a shed has three features similar to an angel and three features not similar to an angel. And one of the features similar to an angel is that they have wings. So they actually wonder about this Rashi. But what's interesting is the Minchas Elazar, the Munkacher. The Munkacher writes in his Chuvas that scientists, they talk about how evolution, they talk about how man evolved from an ape. And then they found certain characteristics that are very similar between a human and the monkey family. So it says the Minchas Elazar that this is exactly what they're right, but exactly the opposite of what they said. They said that people evolved from monkeys. In fact, it's the other way around. As the Gemara says right here, the punishment for the people of the Der HaFloga, 1/3 of the Der HaFloga, was that they all became apes and monkeys in that kingdom. And that's why you'll find, he says, a lot of similarities between the DNA and the features and all that, the character of the monkey family or the ape family and the human family. That's interesting what he says there. And what's even more interesting is Rabbi Yonason Eibeshitz in his sefer called Tiferes Yonason. Rabbi Yonason Eibeshitz lived in the times of the Baal Shem Tov. So we're now talking about 280 years ago, way before Jules Verne. And he writes that what actually happened here. He says the whole story makes sense. What they thought they could build a tower to reach the sky, but what happened here? So he writes, and in detail, he says that they worked out that gravity has a very strong pull in this world, and therefore you cannot send any rocket ships up to the sky. And he said a rocket ship works, and he explains how a booster works, and he talks about gunpowder, and if you have enough force, you can, propel it upwards. The problem is that you're fighting gravity and it's too strong. But they thought that if you can build a building high enough to get outside of the atmosphere, they didn't know how high the atmosphere was. They calculated that they can build a skyscraper, and the skyscraper will take them right outside the atmosphere, and then they'll build this rocket ship, and they'll have with a booster, they'll send the propeller rocket upwards. There's nothing to stop. There's no inertia or anything else to stop the rocket, and it will go till Shemayim. That was their plan. And he writes in such detail, you think that he's living now, and he understands exactly how these things work. Amazing. It's the first innocent in Parshas Noach. And then that's the second group that got punished. And the third group is in the first wide line, the Gemara. And the third group that said, let's go serve Avodah Zarah. What happened to them is they got all mingled, the languages got all mixed up, because as prior to that, as Rashi says, they only spoke Lashon Kodesh. And now nobody understood each other. Tanya, we learned, Rabbi says, whichever group you want to talk about, they all intended to worship Avodah Zarah. It says here, Nasa Shem. Let's make a name. Says, Shem Elhim Achedim Lo Yisaskiru. The word name is referring to other gods. Malahala, they were idols. Afkan, here also talking about idols. Rabbi Yechanan says, Migdal. So what happened to this tower? Shlish Nisav, a third of it was burnt. Shlish Nivla, a third of it was absorbed, got sunk into the ground. And Shlish Kaim, there's still a third left from that skyscraper. Amar Avir Migdal Mishkeach. It has now, it's sort of doomed, it has a spell on it that anything neighboring that forgets because they forgot how to speak their languages. So therefore it makes you very forgetful. And Amar Rabbi Yisrael says, Bavel, it sounds like Babylon, Ubursif, in a city called Bursif, Simarava Torah, it's bad for Torah. Why is it bad for Torah? Because it makes you forget everything. So you forget what you learned. And my bursif, what's the word bursif? Amar Rab Ami Boyer Shafi. It's a boyer that empties out of all of its contents. Now this is a perplexing Gemara. Rabbi Yosef himself lived in Babel. Rabbi Yosef was called Sinai because he remembered everything. He didn't forget. And he's saying that you live in Babel, you forget everything. What does that even mean? It must be, there's another Gemara in Gittin, I can't remember exactly what daf it is, that there was also a city called Babel. There's a country Babel, there was a city called Babel. And this must be talking about the city called Babel, and that's where the Migdal was. And because it's neighboring to that tower, it makes them forget. We're not talking about Babel at large. Anyhow, so we finish with the Darafloga, and now goes the next chapter. Anshes Doim. The people of Zdaim have no share in the world to come. Again, the Mishnah, because the Mishnah is talking about non-Jews and is telling us that non-Jews don't have these bad people don't have a Chekom Haba, means the Mishnah follows the view of Rabbi Yeshua that Goyim who are proper and behave well and they keep the Zaymis and Noach, they do go to Olam Haba. It's only these bad ones that don't. Tell them what we learned. It says they were bad and they were sinners. This double speak, we'll see them in why. It was bad for them in this world, and they were sinners in the world to come. Omar Rav Yehuda says, I can break it down further. Royim begufan, they were bad, they behaved badly physically, and the chatoyim b'mamayna, they also behaved badly with their money. They were extremely thrifty, spendthrifty, and they were very, very, parsimonious. And they refused to be generous. Royim begufa, where do you find the word ra? Means that they personally misbehave with their bodies. In other words, they committed adultery or that. The Chibit says, Yosef said to this, to Potiphar, how do you expect me to do this ra, this terrible thing? And he's referring to having intimate relations with her. The chatasi lelakim, I'll be sitting to Hashem. So we see that ra means doing an affair with your body. And chatoyim b'mamayim, chatoyim is referring to money. The Chibur says, v'hoye b'chor chet, it says v'hoye b'chor chet, and you will have a sin if you what do you call it? And that what is that? And that pasuk is what do you call it? The v'hoye b'chor chet is talking about with I guess using money in a bad way. Is v'hoye b'chet. I forgot what it's talking about over there already. And it's talking about money. Okay. La Hashem, it continues. La Hashem, you'll be singing to Hashem. Zu birchas Hashem. This is that also being a blasphemer. And that's what Hashem is. And Ma'oid, very much so. Miskavnim v'chaitim. We're talking about the Anshes Daim, all the things that they did. So they did commit adultery or debauchery. They were terrible with their money. As Imar will soon explain exactly what they did with their money. They were blasphemers, and they knew what they were doing was wrong and was done intentionally. The Masnita Tana in the Brisa we actually learned. It says "V'chatashi lalikim la'Hashem." Sorry, I skipped a line. Royim, there in the Brisa, just opposite. Royim means the word royim is referring to money. And chatoyim is referring to gufan, where they did averus with their guf. Royim b'mamayim, the Chibur says, it says that you will behave badly with your brother, the poor person, what are you doing? You're not being charitable. So that's money. Ra is referring to money. And chatoyim begufim, the chsiv, because Yeshua said, "V'chatashi lalakim," I'll be sinning to Hashem, referring to having intimacy with wife of Potiphar. And what does La Hashem mean? Zu birchas Hashem. And La Hashem means that they were blaspheming, and the word ma'oid is shvichas dam. This is describing the people as dying, that they also spilled innocent blood. Remember, it says dam noki shafach. Not a harbor moed. It says so. See again. It says they split. It says the word ma'oid, that they spilled a lot of blood. So we see that the word is that Menashe killed innocent people, and there's a lot of blood. In fact, we had, and therefore we see the word ma'oid is referring to murder. So what have I learned? Amshis Daim, the people of Daim, loin is go. Why were they so haughty? Because life was good. Everything was good. HaKadosh Baruch Hashem gave them only good things. What does it say about them? It says, Eretz mimena yotzelechem, that they came from a land that the bread came, there was plenty, of abundant amount of food. But it turned over and became fire. Became sapir avanel, that it's a place. The stones were like sapphires. The afres zav loy, and the sand was like gold. No, wherever they turned, everything was there. Nesiv lo yado ayit, that the robbers couldn't find anything. Veloish is up to ayin. Ayah is where that the spies, whatever it is, there was no spies or anything else. Everything was great. Life was great. Wild animals did not trample them. There were no vicious snakes over there. Life was good. So Omru, they all said, if life is so good, what do we need Hashem for? Since we have land that provides us all the sustenance, and we have all this gold, why should we want any passers-by, and they'll be parasites, and they'll take something from us? Coming to take from us our money. Is let's prevent any immigrants or any tourists or any visitors, anybody from coming in. Because it says in Pasuk, Podatz Nachal Ma'im Gor, and they said that Podatz Nachal, that a canal, a stream, will break or breach from its normal way. Hanishkochim Miniregel, that's forgotten from the footwork. Nobody's really coming down this way. And Dali and Me'enosh go, and they will come, and we have no people coming here to visit us and to bother us. So that's what caused them to behave the way they behave. Those Rav Dashan. It says in Pasuk, Ad honor to Haisu, till when are we going to wonder Al Ish? Until when are you guys going to wonder Al Ish on these people? To Ratzchu, this is what the people of Zayim used to do. You used to see people coming with money, whatever you wanted to kill them. Kulchem Bikin, not you would make sure that they stood under a wall that was sort of a bit, not very strong, and you make sure that the wall collapsed. And Gadir Hatchuya, you would then push the wall down on this person, make sure it collapsed, and take away all the person's belongings. They saw anybody that happened to have some money. They would set the person up right next to a wall that was sort of bent over. And then they would throw the wall on him. They would seize all of his money. They were evil people. They would dig during the night when it's dark underneath the houses, and by day they would then go ahead and close themselves in. Didn't see any light. What in the world are we talking about here? This is what happened. They didn't see any light. They saw people who had money, and they didn't know where hid the money. So what they did was, they go to these rich people and say, look, we have this very strong incense. We would like you to store it in your, privately, and mine it for us. And so if they were going to store it, they placed it in their safe or their treasure where they kept all their money. But because it had such a strong scent, it would waft its way outside of the safe or the treasure, and the people, these ganovim, the people who's dying, would come and follow the scent and find out where the money is. Let a boy and at night they would come and smell sniff it out like a dog. It says she will edit They would come back at night and they would wander about like a dog and they would surround the city. They would go and they dig underneath those treasury houses, and they would take the money away. It says in the pasuk Orum. It says Orum. If somebody was naked, Yolino Bush. If somebody came to town that was naked, they wouldn't give it. They would let him sleep, but would not give him any clothing. And if it was very cold, they wouldn't give them anything to cover themselves with, so they would freeze. They would take away the donkeys from orphans, and Yachblu Shoyr Almana, and they would then confiscate the cow or the ox of a widow that would provide her sustenance or work, and they took it away from them. Then it says the pasuk Gevulas Yasigu, they would seize other people's boundaries, they would extend the boundaries. Eider Goslo, they would steal people's flock, the Yirum, and then take them over and make them graze in the field as if they're their own. And then they would take the person and dump him in the ground, and they would build over there a mound. In other words, they were not hospitable at all to any guest that came. So Dorish Rabbi Yasi b'Tzepoidi, Rabbi Yasi Darshan in Tzepoidi, this Gemara about a chatrin, about digging, and this trick that they used were giving this a farsman, which normally translates balsam, and give it to the people and how to break into the people's houses. Zahu Laila, that after he gave that share, that night, Klas Meya Machtarta b'Tzepoidi. What happened was that night, 300 rich people were robbed by different ganovim. And how did they find out this method? Only for Rabbi Yossi Shir. Also, all the rich people came to Rabbi Yossi and they said to him, why did you reveal to the Ganovim this particular method of how to break into somebody's house and how to find, our treasures? He said to them, they said to him, you gave them a method of how to break in. He said, you think I knew that Ganovim come to listen to a shir? I had no idea. Therefore, I thought that only Tamid Chachamim or people who Yari Shemayim would come here, my shir. Kika noch nafshe Rabbi Yossi. So people had many they had recriminations against Rabbi Yossi, but when he passed away, Shafi Marzavit the all the pipes and the stormwater pipes and everything else in Tzipori, that's where he was a rabbi, produced blood to show that even Hashem was very upset that he passed away. There was a big tzaddik. Now the Gemara gives some examples of how unfair their justice system was. Amri, they made a rule. If somebody owned one cow, then you had to offer yourself up. You had to take everybody else's cows, and one day, as a period, you have to go ahead and take them to pasture. But if you don't know any cows, then it's your duty to take everybody's cows 2 days and to go ahead and to graze. That doesn't make sense. There was this Yasim, the son of a widow. He had a cow to go ahead and graze. Also, and they made this law. And they made him take 2 days and so on. So what he did was, no, sorry, he had nothing, and they made this law that if you have nothing, you got to go ahead and take care of everybody's cows for a couple of days. Ozli went, he took everybody's cows and he killed them out. And Amalui then turned around to everybody. He said, this is the rule. The Islay Toida, if you owned one cow, Nishkol Chad Mashka, you take one hide. Or but the Leslay Toida, if you didn't own any cows, then Nishkol Tei Mashka, you're entitled to 2 hides. Amalui, why hide? What are you talking about? You don't own any cows and you're walking away with 2 hides? What's the logic in that? Amalui said, very much so. I am now meting out justice exactly like you did. Just like you said when the animals are alive. If you own a cow, you have to take everyone's animals to graze for 1 day. The last if you don't own any, 2 days. I've saved dinner, the same thing as the end. If the animals died, that if you own one cow, you take the hide of one cow. Or the last if you have no cows, just go today, take 2. If you want me to graze 2 days when I don't own any cows, I'm entitled to 2 hides when you don't own any cows. Then he went some more rules. The other amount, if you cross the river, let's say we're on a boat, on a ferry, you got to pay $1. Or but the other amount, you just crossed it on your own, you swam across, you walked across, you got to give $2. The Havale, yeah, the Havale daughter, the living, if you, let's say, we're about to build a house, so you piled up all these bricks over there, or you produce bricks that you're going to use. Also called every person in Zdaim went and took one brick, and each brick was worth less than a pruta. They said, well, it's less than a pruta. What do you want? Meanwhile, you had no bricks left. I only took one. If somebody, let's say, had a farm and he was making onion, he was planting onions and garlic. Also, every person came and took one clove of garlic, one onion, and I only took one. Leave me alone. It's less than a pruta. Arba Daina was done before judges was done, but their names give away who they really were. One was called Shakroi, one was called Liar, the Shakruroi, big liar, Zaifi, the forger, Umatsadina, the corrupt judge who always, slants the din the way he wants to. The Machveli, this is what they give a few examples of justice is done. The if somebody beat somebody else's wife, and caused it to miscarry, so you know what the justice system said? Amile, they would say to the husband of the woman who just miscarried, Yavanella, give your wife to the person who beat her, the nebre, and let him keep her until eventually he impregnates her. And hell of another psak, the pasuk le'udne the chamra, if somebody cut off, let's say, the ear of a donkey, the Chavre, and the victim came and took him to court. Omrele, they said, you know what justice is? Give him the use of the donkey until the ear grows back. Ade kotcha, until the ear grows back. The part of the Chavre, if Reuven, let's say, if somebody beat up somebody else and made him bleed, Amrele, the judge would say to the victim, I got to pay out to the perpetrator the shakal adama. He just saved you a job. He extracted some blood. You don't have to worry about going to hakaza, get your blood to circulate. And then the judges would say, if you cross the river, you have with a ship, with a boat, a ferry, you have you pay $4. If you walk by foot across the water, you have tamnas, they give $8. This is the justice system of Daim. Totally askew. Zim Lechad, that happened once. Also, Kavis came along a launderer, equal a hustle, he came into town. When he came into town, so the toll booth said, well, you got to pay you $4. I didn't go by ferry. I walked across or swam. So in Kane, you got to pay 8. The Abramaya, because he crossed the river. He refused to give them. Padu, they hit him. They made him bleed. Asakam made a diner. He took them to court. So the judge said, now you got to pay double. You have to pay, first of all, the shakladam, it made you bleed, and the tam man, plus pay in addition the fine for crossing the river by foot. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, Yisrami Hashem, once ended up this time. Padu, somebody hit him. That was his welcome. Also, Kamed the diner, he took that person to a court, to a judge. Amalei, the judge ruled, you, the victim, have to pay the perpetrator, the shakal adama. He took your blood. So what did Eliezer do? Smart as he was. Shakal gal, he took a stick or he took a rock, and Padu, and he threw it on the judge's head and made the judge bleed. Eladain, he threw it on the judge's head. And then he said, and Omamahai, the judge said, what are you doing? Amalei said, Eliezer to the judge, look, the money you owe me now, you pay directly to the perpetrator who hit me. And, leave me out of it. Agra, the money that I'm going to take away from you now, because you owe me, I made you bleed. Pay directly to that person. And I'm not getting involved with it. I'm staying out of the picture. Money stays with me. Havale put Isa in Slim that had his bed. They would put any guest came. They say, oh, you have a bed for you. But you had to fit exactly the bed. Ki maidich, if you were tall, if your leg stuck out, guys, they would cut part of your leg off. Ki gavot, if you're too short, matchle, they would stretch you out. So when Eliezer came, the husband was there. Amrullah said to him, "Nu, kum gani apuri, go lie down on the bed." Amrullah said, he's very smart. Nidra nadri min yayma the misalim of the day my mother died. I made a vow. Loi ganina apuri, no longer sleep on a bed. If a poor person came into town, they wanted to show that they were generous. Each one gave them a dinner, and the kosa shmela, and they would write their name on that coin. But then when this person had so many coins, you go to the store to purchase whatever it is, no store would sell to him. They all knew who was locals and who was a foreigner. They wouldn't sell to him. And eventually he died from hunger. He died because every single member of the Daim wrote their name on their coin. They were able to take it back, got their money back. They took back their own coins. They also made another rule between themselves. Anybody had the chutzpah to invite a guest who's not local to a wedding, they have to strip him of his clothes and humiliate him in public. There was a wedding, Eliezer came there. Nobody wanted to give him any bread. He's starving. He wanted to eat. Also, Eliezer, he also was safe for the kulu. He sat down, he went into the waiting hall, and he sat down at the end of the table. The guy sitting next to him said, who invited you here? You invited me. This guy got so scared. If anybody else heard that he invited him, even though he'll protest it, they won't believe him, and they'll strip him of his clothes. I know people here that I'm the one who invited him. They'll strip my clothes. He took his clothes. Took the clothes of the guy sitting next to Eliezer, and he ran out of the wedding hall. So then Eliezer moved from person to person. He went to every person and they all ran away. He had the entire wedding for himself. And this is the sad story that triggered the final punishment for people as Daim. There was this young girl that would come Mafka. She saw this poor person coming in. She had such a chmanis, so she brought out bread to this person. She put it down in the bottom of a barrel, like as if she's going to draw water from the well or something, and meanwhile she snuck bread. And they realized, how in the world this poor person is still surviving? Somebody must be cheating. And they watched very closely and they saw her. It became real to them. They found out what happened. So what they did was, shafia dufsha, they smeared honey all over her body. The ukme al ega shura, they put her on top of a wall and tied her down. Also, the booty came all of these bees, and ate. They were sucking the honey. And then she died 1,000 deaths. The screaming and shouting, ki rabba, is so great. And Rabba also, if you read a riba, is a girl. So this, because of the account of this young girl, that's what happened. The next thing is meraglim ein lechagim haba. The meraglim have no share in the world to come. We did our flogger, Anshe's Daim, and now we're up to the Eden of the meraglim themselves. Now it says by Musa, the Magefa. This is the same thing we had before, that the Sari Harugi Malchus, they're punished. And we'll see later they have no Chayim Haba, is because they denigrated Eretz Yisrael. And because they denigrated Yisrael, they said, when Sanhedrin sent them out somewhere, and they said, oh, this place is twice as good as our homeland in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore they forfeited their right for resurrection. Same over here. The Meraglim, they weren't interested in going to Yisrael. So Vayimusu Anoshim Maitzia Dibas Aret Ra Bamagefa. So what do we say? So it says Vayamusu, and then it says Bamagefa, like double death. Vayamusu Zolam Hazim. Bamagefa Olam Habo. Adas Koirach Ein Lehem Chayim Haba. Now, very interesting. Mefarshim pick up. It says that the community of Koirach have no Chayim Haba. What about Koirach himself? It doesn't say Koirach. It should have said Koirach Va'adasa. Like by Machlekes, the Shalom Shemayim. It just said Adas Koirach, because Koirach was very different, and Koirach maybe don't have a Chayim Haba. Let's see. It says, it says that the ground covered them by Olam Haza. The Yavin Hakol is Olam Haba. Every time it says double, they're like killed, they got lost. It's one for Olam Haza, one for Olam Haba. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Lezer disagrees. Regarding them, the pasuk says, Hashem memis umachaya. He kills and he resurrects. Moed Shoel, he tosses them down to Gehenim, Vial, and he brings them back up again. We learned that it says, but the Yevdel Kol Olam Haba. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva is very harsh. No Chelim Haba. Mercedes says, No, they're like Aveda, you lost something, but you keep on looking to find it and bring them back. So then it says to Isi, I was wandering, I was blunging, I was like I lost, like a lost sheep. And your servant is looking for you because the mitzvahs you haven't forgotten. In other words, they do have a chayim on Hama. Vayikach Koirach, Koirach took. How much luck is what did he take? The Parsha says Vayikach Koirach doesn't say what he took. Shalokach Mekach Ro La'atzmai. He took himself bad advice, or in fact, he started arguing. His whole strategy was wrong. Koirach, what's the name Koirach? Shenase Korcha B'Yisrael. We're going to explain every name because he caused a void by the Eden, or basically a bold spot by the Eden, because so many Eden got killed because of him. Ben Yitzhar, very interesting. The Chassam Sofer writes on the Torah that the reason why Koirach, because we know that we'll see, Koirach was a very big tzaddik, and the reason why Koirach did what he did was because he had the name Koirach. The first time in the Torah was from the family of Esav. When it counts in the end of Vayishlach, there all the different families of Esav, Aluf, Aluf, Aluf. One of them is Koirach, and and we learned in the end of Ksubis that you're not supposed to call somebody after the name of a Rasha. Shem Rashem Yirkut. And because his name was Koirach, therefore he had some of the behavior of the family of Esau. So the Gemara continues. Remember, he had a Taisus, and then the Ksubik allowed to call someone Avshalom. And Taisus said you shouldn't call anyone Avshalom because you're not Shem Hashem Yirkov. You call him Avi Shalom. And Yishmael, if he did Tshuva, then you can call Yishmael. If he didn't do Tshuva, you don't call Yishmael. There are two opinions whether Yishmael did Tshuva or not. So the Gemara continues. So he took what we call Ben Yitzhar. Ben Shetichol Kol Ha'olam Kitzarayim. He got the whole world excited like the middle of the day. He got them angry against Moshe. Ben Kohos, Ben Shehika Shinei Malidov. Then he went ahead and he blunted the I guess his behavior of the teeth of his ancestors, because he was basically taunting Moshe Rabbeinu and in his family. And Ben Levi, what do you remember Ben Levi? Ben Shenasa Levi Begehenim. Yeah, that he was a son that was escorted to Gehenim. And in fact, we'll see later, Moshe Rabbeinu sort of said, if Gehenim wasn't created yet, let's create it right now. So if we're very tracing his genealogy, why don't we go back to Yaakov? So Rashi means a Chumash, and say Ben Sha'okov Atzli Gehenim, somebody prepared his way for Gehenim. Is Yaakov Bikesh Rachel, Yaakov begged and implored. Remember, it says, don't involve me in their secrets. We'll call them and when they gather together, don't have to mention my honor. These were the Menaglim. Made their secret, their whole secret plan until they came back. Dosan, now we're talking about Dosan Vaviram, they joined Koirach. A couple of fascinating midrashim. There's a Tzaddik HaKoyin from Lublin in his Sefer. I mean, if you read through the Torah constantly, the Torah talks about Dosan Vaviram. They're like the worst Rishonim ever. The worst Rishonim ever. In fact, the Rishonim ask, they don't understand why Dosan Vaviram left Mitzrayim. If there were such terrible people Rishonim, why did they go out of Mitzrayim? And the Tzaddik HaKoyin Lublin talks about Dosan Vaviram in a very complimentary way. There's a medrash that says when the Eden, it says that Eden went back in Rashi at the end of where's it? Hukas, they went back 8 Masois towards Mitzrayim. It says that they appointed Dosan Vaviram to become their leader. So there's a few fascinating midrashim that says that that Dosan Vaviram did not leave Mitzrayim. They joined Parah. Tang Yenshem and Azil says that Dosan Vaviram went together with Parah to Kriyas Yamsuf. And then when they saw that the Yam split and all the Eden crossed, and what happened to Mitzrayim, Parah and all the soldiers, it says in the Medrash that the Yam Suf split a second time so that Dosan Vaviram should be able to cross. Fascinating. As if it was part of the plan. According to another Medrash, Moshe Rabbeinu davened to Hashem that Dosan Vaviram should survive when they made this gzera that everyone should be tossed into the river, that Dosan Vaviram should survive. And how that's possible, because Moshe Rabbeinu was born that year, is because Rashi learned, I don't know if you noticed Rashi yesterday, in yesterday's Gemara, Rashi said that The Gzeira of Kol Habein Hayilud Hayored Tashlechu did not start when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. It started 210 years as soon as the Eden went to Mitzrayim. That's when the Gzeira came out, which is difficult to understand, but that's what Rashi says. Which means by the measure that says that Moshe Rabbeinu saved exactly how it works is not sure, but somehow or another that means there's more to the story. There's more to the story who Dasav Avidim were. The Torah spent so much time dealing with them. And it says in the Zohar that Korach was a very big tzaddik, Pekecha was a big tzaddik and everything else. And it says that the first the Yitav Lev, I think it was the third Satmar Rebbe, said that he was a Gilgul Neshama, and the first time his Neshama came to this world was at this time in the Midbar. And so this Chassidim asked him, so which side were you? He said, remembers clearly that all the Dayanim, the Rosh Sanhedrin, they all joined Korach. It was the simple masses who followed Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, but all the Gedolei Yisrael, they were all with Korach, every one of them. And so this Chassidim asked him, so who are you with? Which side? He said, I didn't know, I wasn't with either side. And he said, what do you mean, how can you not go with Moshe Rabbeinu? So he said, if you would have been alive then, and you would have seen that Korach was a very, very strong protagonist, and the fact that he was a Navi and Shmuel Hanavi came from him says there's more to the story than what it seems so superficially in the Torah. But they were arguing about.
That he was actually there.
Speak louder, what?
He claimed that he was actually there.
Yeah, I said he said he was there. He said he remembered he had 3 Gilgul Neshamas. He had 2. One was then, I can't remember the other one, and then when he was the Yitav Lev. Okay, back to the Gemara. So now the Gemara here says Dasan Ba'avidim. Why are they called Dasan Ba'avidim? Dasan, every name we're explaining. Remember, Meir, you always darshan people's names. Dasan Shavra Das, that he went against the Jewish religion. Das Kel. He went against the Jewish religion. Okay. Aviram She'ibur, he strengthened himself. Ma'aseh Tshuva. He made sure that he wouldn't do Tshuva. The Oin, this is Oin Bet Peles. What's Oin? Sheyashav Baninas. He was very sad. We'll soon see what happened to him. And Peles Shenasa Loi Plois. Why is he called Peles? Because unbelievable miracle happened to him that he was saved. Ben Reuven, Ben Sherav Behaven. He understood. He understood that this is a great folly to follow Korach. Rav said, Oin Ben Peles Isha Yitzilta. His wife saved him. She said to him, I don't understand. Why are you following Korach? What's the difference? What difference is it to you? Either way, you're going to be a Talmud. What's the difference to you whether you're Korach Talmud or Moshe Rabbeinu's Talmud? It's too late. I already promised my allegiance. What should I do? I was a part of the advisory team. In fact, I swore to him my allegiance. She said to him, I know the Kula Knishta Kadishaninu. I know. This is what the Gemara said. I know that every person who's following Korach is a tzaddik. They're all holy people. When Korach said that the Eidos Kul Gedoshim, he meant it. They would take it literally. They were all tzaddikim. So Amr she said to him, Toiv, so you just stay here. I am going to rescue you. You just stay here. I'm going to rescue you. So he said, yeah. She gave him to drink wine. He was a bit inebriated and he fell asleep. She stood by the door of the tent when they came to rally all the people to follow Korach. She stood there by the entrance of the tent. She removed her cover of her hair, and she left the braids open and she left her hair down. Kol the Aser, and these people from Korach's people who came to rally their support, Chazia, when they saw her Hadar, and when they saw that she was there, Hadar, they left. So from here again, you can see that they're all tzaddikim. They saw this woman that they thought wasn't dressed appropriately. They just walked away. Even though they knew that Oin was there and Oin was a chashuv person and they could use his support, they didn't because it's tznius. In the meantime, in the meantime, by the time he woke up, the story was over already because they were all swallowed up in the river. That's the wife of Oin ben Peles. But Itza the Korach, contrast that with the wife of Korach. She incited him to start this whole thing. She said, Chazi, my cousin Moshe, look at what Moshe doing. He took upon himself, assumed the mantle of the king, of being a monarch. His brother, he made the high priest. His brother, sons, they're all deputies. And if somebody brings truma, give it to my brother's family. He also meiser, and even if you're a Levi, you're entitled to meiser the tithe. The shkiltat, and you take Amar have the coin. He turns around to you and says, "Give 10% of the coin." But the guy is Leila Mazaich. When he wanted to indoctrinate you, he went ahead, inauguration. What he did was he shaved you off, made you look silly. And he swung you around like dung. He was just jealous that he was handsome and you guys also were all handsome. So he made you look like a bunch of fools and he made you shave off your hair. Amala, he said, so Caleb said to his wife, what are you talking about? He also shaved himself. We're all in the same boat. Amala, she said, keeping the cool of the day, since you're all subordinate to him. Amar Ionami, Thomas Nafshi police him. He said, like Shem Shagiva said, okay, I'll also lose my hair. Who cares? I don't care anymore because I'm now the superior. And then she started mocking further. So Kairach initially was only attacking Moshe Rabbeinu, why he took upon himself, the leadership. Kairach felt that he was entitled to be leader. But now she was very mocking the entire Torah. She told you to make tchelis, right? You have to have one string of tchelis. If you can tell me that tchelis is chashuv, that in mitzvah, then take a whole beged, make a whole garment full of tchelis. They don't need any strings. In other words, what she was really saying was that you have a leader because you have one leader. Tchelis is like the leader, and everybody follows. But if kulam kedoshim, if the entire garment is blue, why do you need a leader? If everybody's kedoshim, who needs leaders at all? So actually, she wasn't so silly, but that was the argument that she used. You'll see what it says. On the one hand, the wisdom of women build a house, so each the shalem that's the wife of Mepelis, and the velas beyond the her narishkeit, the foolishness can destroy the ishtishul koirach. That's the wife of koirach. Rashi Chumash does not bring the talos of chelis; he brings the mezuzah by Molis Forum. That did not come from her. That came from koirach himself. But it's the same idea that you don't need a leader if everybody else is kadeshim. We'll pause for 1 minute.